And now for tonight's presentation. Tonight's speaker is an award-winning author, poet, and naturalist, having written over 24 works of nonfiction and poetry, including the New York Times bestsellers, The Zookeeper's Wife, A Natural History of the Senses, and The Human Age. For decades, her work has appeared in the New York Times, The New Yorker, The American Scholar, Smithsonian, National Geographic, and many other journals, and in 2016, she was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. This evening, we'll join Diane for an evening exploring two of her research projects spanning the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Through her photographs and her storytelling, we'll accompany her on an extraordinary journey from the breeding grounds of the short-tailed albatross on a remote Japanese island, where these magnificent seabirds are recovering from near extinction, to the nursery waters of Patagonia, where right whale mothers pause with their calves on their way to rich feeding grounds of the Antarctic. So without further delay, please join me in warmly welcoming Diane Ackerman as she presents Wings and Waves, Adventures with Albatrosses and Whales from Japan to Patagonia.
Thank you so much. And Jerry Skinner has very kindly offered to do the PowerPoint that's going to go with this. I'm delighted to be here and especially to be part of the Bird Club, which I absolutely love. At one point in my life, I was lucky enough to travel the world to work with endangered animals and write about them mainly for the New Yorker and National Geographic, hoping to bring attention to their plight and to help protect them if I could, to write about them to do that, and also just to work with them hands-on. I collected those essays in two books, The Rarest of the Rare and The Moon by Whale Light. Unfortunately, there wasn't time for a book signing tonight, but I left a little notebook and pen at the back on the table, and if you're interested in a copy, I can make sure that you get one if you put your contact information there. I'm going to read a sample from these books tonight, beginning with the trip to Torishima, a small, remote, uninhabited, active volcano almost at the end of the Japanese island chain, where I went with two ornithologists, Hiroshi Hasegawa of Toho University and Peter Harrison, to visit the last few surviving short-tailed albatrosses. These exquisite birds once clouded the skies from Japan to California. In barely 100 years, plume hunters slaughtered almost every single one of them. In a 17-year period alone, 5 million were killed to stuff mattresses and quilts. When I went to Torishima in the 1990s, there were about 1,300 who had found hiding place there that was virtually inaccessible to humans. Today, the number is higher, but it's still under 10,000. And there's more than one breeding site now. There are breeding sites in 2 places on the island. And very much thanks to our own Steve Kress, who is here, and his wonderful social attraction efforts. They've been luring more albatrosses to settle there and nest. It's been working really well. After a fishing boat drops us off on the shore of the island, we climb 10 stories of rocky steps to a small, abandoned cement bunker from World War II, which becomes our base camp. The next morning, we set out over a steep meadow of grasses. Below us, large skirts of frozen lava ripple towards the coast, where they once enveloped a whole village. Making our steepest climb in the early part of the day, we cut across the mountains and walk up a glacier of crushed lava and over ground singed with bright yellow sulfur salts and black scabs. By mid-morning, we reach a field of lava rocks, missiles ejected from the volcano that have turned a narrow mountain pass into a wind-blown moonscape of starkest black and white and it's even been called the Moon Desert. At the end of the pass, the land suddenly drops away and the entrance to the cliffs begins. There we see an explosion of tall pinnacles and wind-ripped rock, walls spilling down through twisted chasms, and at the very bottom, down an impassable set of interlocking cliffs, a small flock of brown and white birds dot the grass. They look like handkerchiefs someone has dropped onto a lawn. An invisible fist knocks the breath out of me, and I sigh out loud. There are so few of them. It is heartbreaking to see the last remaining nesting short-tailed albatrosses on Earth. Over the breeze, we can just make out their whistles and whinnies. The scene throbs with color. The bulging, oxidized orange cliffs, the green grasses below on which the albatrosses nest, the tan rock face, the golden ochres, the black lava. Through binoculars, we see the yellow bands, and we see the yellow heads of the birds, so close now, yet so far, so inaccessible. Above them, a fantasia of albatrosses sails across the sky. Men built a garrison at the other side of the island, but nature built one here that is far stronger and more impenetrable. Because of this natural fortress, based entirely on the bad temper of rock, the birds have survived the onslaught of humans. We all stand silently and just behold the fortress for some minutes. It is utterly astonishing that Hiroshi has been studying the birds in such an impossible locale for the past 10 years. That the birds are increasing in number is a great testimony to his efforts and to the support of the Japanese government, who have declared the birds a national monument. Not the island, the birds are the national monument. And also, as I was saying, thanks to Steve Kress as well. It's comforting to think that in a high-speed world, where people sometimes content themselves with shallow efforts, naturalists like Hiroshi are at work devoting their lives to saving one species. Let's go, he says at last, and we set off along the east side of the walls. He has marked a large O in white paint on some of the more secure rocks along the way. But it is a steep, slippery climb with sheer 400-foot cliffs. When we come to a particularly awkward plunge of rocks near the edge, Hiroshi attaches a rope to one rock. A strong climber, passing the rope behind the waist and holding one end in the right hand and one end in the left hand, can lean back against the rope and use it to slip and break their way down. But I have never climbed with ropes before, or climbed rocks for that matter, except informally, and find it very strenuous. But I do like the feel of the rope as it slides and rasps through my hands. Leaning back, I try to lower myself slowly, but my foot swivels, and suddenly I skid towards the cliff edge, clinging to the rope. Loose stones clatter below. Above me, I see Peter and Hiroshi transfixed to the rocks, watching me suspended over a 300-foot chasm. All the emotion smashed out of their faces. There is no point in looking down. Lesson number 1, don't let go of the rope. Hanging on with my left hand, I bring my right hand around, find a handhold, and pull myself back up. Once I find my footing, I continue across a rocky bridge and reluctantly let go of the rope for the next person. Peter and Hiroshi have both been rock climbing for many years, and I understand at once how seductive it can be. At each station along the way, it feels hawk-like to perch high with towering freedom, to pause and look out over the valley below and the ocean beyond. But I especially like the puzzle of figuring out which rock will make a handhold, what tablet, pyramid, or silo of earth to cling to, on what slender ledge to place my foot. At times, you are violently gripping the bones of the planet, and at others, tiptoeing down the shallowest stairway. It is a strange, tentative searching with all of one's limbs that unites you as nothing else could to the core of the planet, to the violence that forged it, to the thrust and fall of the rock, frozen forever in the memory of a mountain. Rocks have veins and faces, and there is the texture of rock. In one moment raspy, spiky, and brutal, in the next gentle, forgiving, and smooth. There are the colors of blood, midnight, and autumn. There is the steep persuasion of gravity, drawing you down the ladder of its rocky spine. Again, I misstep, and holding on to the rope, slide back into a ledge, collect myself, and continue on down to where Hiroshi, now seeing that I'm all right, leaps into a hill of deep sandy lava and cascades with it clear down to the bottom. Peter does the same, and I follow. Then we scramble up a small dune and suddenly find ourselves staring straight across a plateau at two bustling colonies of short-tailed albatrosses, nesting, yawning, romancing, tending their eggs, bickering. They go about their normal ways, only 200 yards from us, but just far enough not to be frightened by our presence. Vibrant white with radiant yellow heads and coral pink bills tipped in blue, the adults are insanely beautiful. A subtle wake of shadow runs behind each dark eye. Glossy, elegant, smooth as wax. They stretch their airy wings, and even sitting, they seem to be embracing the wind. The adolescent birds are brown or have mottled plumage of brown and white, some with striking white epaulets. All wear small, discreet, different colored bands around their legs. These are a present from Hiroshi so that he can identify them. Each color denotes a different year. A white band, for example, was put on the right leg of each of the 47 birds hatched in 1986. There are actually two colonies of birds, separated by a black swirling drape of lava, which is narrow enough for the birds to walk across. The young birds sometimes take a mate in the other village and settle there. And depending on the wind, a bird may land in the lower village and climb to the higher one. The older birds with whiter plumage choose to nest, for safety probably, in the center of the colonies. The younger, darker plumed birds are on the outside, and some are sitting with eggs. Occasionally, a bird will stand, rearrange its feathered petticoats so that the egg nestles tightly against the warm brood patch, and then with a twitch or two, settle down into its soft haunches again. 2 eggs are lying outside of nests, which means the chicks within have died. In a species as rare as this, where every newborn counts, this is a very tragic sight. A particularly lovely female, with a bill the sultry coral of a Bahamian sunset, opens up her downy wings and preens them gently. Every single feather has a nerve ending she can use. I try to imagine what it would be like if I could put my arm out and twitch every hair separately. A male approaches her, and suddenly she spreads out the white skirts of her wings and curtsies to him. He curtsies back. Then he reaches his bill forward and brushes up a few of the feathers on her breast. This drives her wild. She slides her bill down along the side of his and starts delicately kissing the small feathers at the base of it. He does the same. Then they pull back a few inches and start a crescendo of clacking that sounds like a spoon hitting hollow wood. It's called castanets. They roll their heads together from side to side as if they were packing an imaginary snowball. Then he rocks forward onto his toes, aching towards her, presses his chest out like a sailboat in a strong blow, and she does the same. Suddenly, they toss their heads skyward, stretch their necks long in mutual yearning, quiver and flap, and they trumpet to high heavens. Their wild, otherworldly music drifts across the grass. It's half whinny, half moo, and Sounds like the surrealistic lowing of cattle, if you ask me. Next, they do a Groucho walk around one another, a low-down strut with their shoulders hunched. And then they face one another and start to curtsy again. While this erotic minuet continues, dozens of black-footed albatrosses, a darker and less extravagant species nesting nearby, engage in more modest courtship dances of their own, in which they sound like speeding cars screeching around tight curves. Just then, a white-tailed albatross sails in off the ocean, flies a wide spiral around the colonies, banks and tilts with fluent grace, and begins what's called reefing. Arching its chest, it pulls its huge sail-like wings in halfway, lets its big feet hang down like a plane's undercarriage, ruffles up its tail feathers as a sort of air brake, and tries to slow down enough to land. Round and round it flies, soaring and reefing, swooping low and funneling high, with an eloquence that leaves us gaping, not quite sure on which pass it will lose flying speed and be able to touch down at last. The sunlight shines through its yellow feet, as if through the paper panes on a sliding door in a Japanese house. Kirei, I say, as more of an exhalation than a word. It is the Japanese for beautiful. And I mean all of it. The heat mirage like a transparent drape of shot silk between us and the colonies. The nesting birds sitting perfect as alabaster statues. The ceremonial square dance of the courting pairs. The incoming bird whirling low and then climbing into steep registers of sky where it half swoons like the high notes of a saxophone solo. At day's end, exhausted, we climb up the cliffs and trek back to the bunker. The following morning, as we climb across the pungent fields again, I feel the warmth of the island's molten heart through my boots. Steam like a dragon's breath rises all around us. In the moon desert where the lava sand blows, each footstep leaves a cloud as if one's life force were burning right through the soles of your feet. Yesterday, we left pouches of water at the spot, and I fall to my knees and hold one of them overhead, pour a long gush of water down my throat, and wash the black dust deeper inside of me. Then we continue on through the narrow pass. Soon we are at the edge of the fortress and begin climbing down. Achy and more tentative today, I find the first rope easy enough. At the second, searching out good footholds, I slide down a rock with one foot, carry the second foot around, slide down to another ledge. The next toehold waits below. Stretching, I give the rope a little slack, stretch farther, lower myself, feel towards the spot, then bang, the floor shoots away underneath me. And spinning around, I fall backward, my left hand gripping the rope as I smash against sharp rock. Pain butts deep into my back. Below me, Hiroshi has already climbed out of sight. Peter, vigilant nearby, looks ready to spring. I'm hurt, called out as a moan. He rushes to me where in mid-cliff, I'm wedged in a sort of colander of rocks. And he says, try to breathe deeply, try to get some air in. I think I've cracked a rib, I say. Looking down at the cliff below, then up at the cliff above, I wonder, how will I get out of here? Perched just below me, Peter checks the best route down. Although I know it's going to be painful, I must somehow turn around and hold onto the rope tightly with my left hand. So I turn painfully and grasp the rope. Peter calls out footholds. Stretch your right foot down to where my feet are, he says. I do. Now move your left foot below you to an open space between those two narrow rocks. He steps down 6 inches. Right foot just above where my right foot is. And so we climb down, half foot by half foot, to where the rock face quits and the lava hill begins. There, struggling to keep my torso straight, I put my hands on his backpack and follow him slowly down to the bottom of the dune. Hiroshi runs forward, anxious and sympathetic. The two men try to pinpoint the pain bleeding low on my left side, which has made it impossible to bend at the waist, nor cough, speak loudly, sneeze, or laugh. Guiding me up onto the crest of the lava dune, which is our lookout point, they dig a pit. Then they brace it with knapsacks and settle me into the hole. Later, I will learn that I have broken 3 ribs. Solid breaks with the rib spars lying horizontal to one another. But when I watched the albatrosses coast overhead, holding the sky on their wings, filled with the restless ongoing of their flight, I would not trade my lot for anyone's. Life is too full of easy entrances and exits. The birds need their garrison, which is all that has saved them. I don't welcome this pain, heaven knows, gnawing like a wolf pack, but if that's the toll that must be paid, then it's well spent. Taking a breath, I laugh quietly to myself. Well, no wonder they survived here. I'm the proof that their fortress works. At twilight, when like monks, we finish our silent beholding, we gather up our knapsacks and consider the ascent. Hampered by a tight straitjacket of pain, I can't move the left side of my body, and yet somehow we must climb back up the cliffs. Hiroshi loops the guide rope high around my shoulders, and Peter lifts me bodily, haunch by haunch, up the cliffs. We are a good team, in calm and in distress. Working together, the 3 of us finally emerge from the fortress and climb wearily back down towards camp. A great day, despite everything, I tell them, and I mean it. Who would drink from a cup, I say, when they can drink from the source? In the book, I go into what happened afterwards. Needless to say, life got very dangerous at that point. But thanks to the kindness of strangers and unbelievably lucky circumstance, somebody showed up on the island in a boat, and I was able to get to a nearby hospital and work my way back up the island. Thank heavens. But now I'd like you to join me on another wonderful trip. That was my benchmark, by the way, for a really tough trip. You know, I said, no more expeditions like this, that's it. This one, though, was so much fun. That was fun too, but it was not like ha-ha fun. This one was to a whale study site in Patagonia with the renowned biologist Roger Payne. A pioneer in whale research, Payne's groundbreaking work helped to galvanize global efforts to protect these majestic creatures. As you may know, he did his graduate work at Cornell in bioacoustics, and along with his wife Katie Payne, discovered that humpback whales sing complex songs, and to my great delight, that they use rhyme to remember their long songs. Southern right whales, once decimated by whaling, are slowly recovering, but they still remain endangered. For hours, I sat quietly and just watched the busy nursery bay, where mother whales, as Stephanie said, bring their babies in to nurse them on their way to the rich feeding grounds of Antarctica. A whale named Fang rolled onto her weighty side and her baby nursed. Then the baby got rambunctious and strayed a little too far. Mother lowed to it in a combination of foghorn and moo, calling it back within eyeshot. From time to time, Fang submerged slowly, her tail hanging limp and loose, trailing one tip of a fluke in the water. She made burpee sounds with occasional moans, and I think she may have been sleeping. When a whale sleeps, it slowly tumbles in any old crazy end-over-end sideways fashion, and it may even bonk its head on the bottom. Or it just lies quietly looking like a corpse. When it rises again to breathe in the midst of its sleep, it comes up as slow as a dream, breaks the surface, breathes a few times, and without even diving, falls again slowly to the bottom, with its tail floating. Right whales sometimes sleep in the mornings on calm days in Argentina, and they're easy to study because they're such at-surface whales, which is how they came by the name the right whale. They were the right whale to hunt. When they're asleep at the surface, their breathing rate drops tremendously. They don't close their nostrils completely between breaths, and so they sometimes snore. In fact, they make marvelous rude after-dinner noises as they sleep. When they wake, they stretch their backs, open their mouths, and yawn. Often they sleep at the surface so long on calm days that their backs get sunburned, and then they peel the same way that humans do, but on a big whale-sized scale. The loose skin from their backs falls into the water and becomes food for birds. Sometimes the birds don't wait for the skin to fall, but sweep down and pull some from the whales' backs. Juan, one of the researchers at camp, appeared at the edge of camp on foot, apparently hiking in from a walk to a neighboring bay. Tired? I asked with an inflection that said, I really hope you're not. Want to go find some whales? He grinned, just let me get a coat and we'll go. Juan and I tugged on wetsuits and boots and climbed into a Zodiac. He had been collecting loose skin for a researcher doing a DNA study and then going into the water to photograph the heads of the whales in order to identify them. I hoped to join him. We searched for an hour, but found none in the mood to be approached. Finally, we were heading back toward camp, and coming around a bend, discovered Fang and her calf still playing. We cut the motor about 200 yards from the whales. Juan and I slipped over the side of the boat, and we began to swim toward them, approaching as quietly as possible so that they wouldn't construe any of our movements as aggressive. In a few minutes, we were only yards from the mother's head. Looking down, I saw the 3-month-old baby beside her, the stony markings on its nose bright in the murky water. Slowly, Juan and I swam all the way around them, getting closer and closer. The long wound on Fang's flank looked red and angry. When her large tail lifted out of the water, its beauty stunned me. And then I yanked Juan's hand to draw his attention, and we pulled back. At 50 feet long, weighing about 50 tons, all she would have needed to do was hit us with a flipper to crush us or swat us with her tail to kill us instantly. But she was moving her tail gently, slowly, without malice. It would be as if a human being, walking across a meadow, had come upon a strange new animal. Our instinct wouldn't be to kill it, but to get closer and have a look, perhaps even touch it. Right whales are grazers, which have baleen plates, not teeth. So I knew that we didn't look like lunch. She swung her head around so that her mouth was within 2 feet of me, then turned her head on edge to reveal a large white patch, and under that, an eye shaped much like a human eye. I looked directly into her eye, and she looked directly back at me as we hung in the water, just studying each other. I wish you well, I thought, applying all the weight of my concentration in case it was possible for her to sense my mood. I did not imagine she could decipher the words or read my mind, but many animals can sense fear in humans. Maybe they can also sense other emotions. Her dark, plum-like eye fixed me, and we stared deeply at one another for some time. The curve of her mouth gave her a Mona Lisa smile, but that was just a felicity of her anatomy. The only emotion I sensed was her curiosity. That shone through her watchfulness, her repeated turning toward us, her extreme passivity, her caution with flippers and tail. Apparently, she was doing what we were, swimming close to this strange life form and really trying not to frighten or hurt it. But perhaps seeing us slip over the side of the Zodiac, she thought it had given birth and we were its young. In that case, she might have been thinking how very little we resembled our parent. Or perhaps she understood only too well that we were intelligent beasts who lived in the strange, dangerous world of the land. where whales can get stranded, lose their bearings and equilibrium, and die. Perhaps she knew somehow that we live in that desert for her, beyond the waves, from which whales rarely return, a kingdom we rule, where we thrive. A whale's glimpse of us, if you think about it, is almost as rare as our glimpse of the whale. They have probably never seen us mating. They have rarely, if at all, seen us feeding. They have never seen us give birth, I'm sure, suckle our young, die of old age. They have never observed our society, our normal habits. They would not know how to tell our sex since we hide our reproductive organs. They would find it especially hard to distinguish between a clothed, short-haired, clean-shaven man and a clothed, short-haired woman. When Fang had first seen us in the Zodiac, we were wearing large smoked plastic glasses, sunglasses. Now we had small eyes shaped like hers, but two on the front of the head, like a flounder or a seal. Not an eye on either side, like a fish or a whale. In the water, our eyes were encased in a glass jar, the snorkeling mask. Our mouths stretched around a rubber tube, and our feet were flippers. Instead of diving like marine mammals, we floated on the surface. Human beings possess such immense powers that few animals cause us to feel truly humble. A whale does, swimming beside you as big as a reclining building, its eye carefully observing you. Suddenly, Juan pulled me back a few feet, and turning, I saw the calf swimming around to our side, though still staying close to its mom. Big as an elephant, it looked like a baby nonetheless. Only a few months old, it was a frisky pup and rampantly curious. It swam right up to me, turned one eye to look, took a good look, then wheeled its head around to look with the other eye, just in case I had changed. When it turned, it swung its mouth up to my chest, and I reached out automatically to touch it, but Juan pulled my hand back. I looked at him and nodded. A touch could have startled the baby, which might not know its strength yet. In a reflex, its flipper tail could have swatted us. It might not know that if humans are held underwater by a playful flipper, say, they can drown. Its flippers hung in the water by its sides, and its small nose markings looked like a crop of field stones. Swimming forward, it fanned its tail, and the water suddenly felt chillier as it stirred up cold from the bottom. The mother was swimming forward to keep up with it, and we followed, hanging quietly in the water, trying to breathe slowly and kick our flippers as little as possible. Curving back around, Fang turned on her side so that she could see us, and waited as we swam up close again. Below me, her flipper hovered, large as a freight elevator. Tilting it very gently in place, she appeared to be sculling. Her tail, too, was barely moving. It would be as if we were treading water. Each time she and the baby blew, a fine mist sprayed into the air, accompanied by a whoomphing sound, as of a pedal organ. We didn't have their insulation of blubber to warm us in such frigid waters, and growing cold at last, after an hour of traveling around the bay with them, we began to swim back toward the beach. To save energy, we rolled onto our backs and kicked with our fins. When we were a few hundred yards away from her, Fang put her head up in a spy hop. Then she dove, rolled, lifted a flipper high into the air like a black rubber sail, and she waved it back and forth. The calf did the same. Juan and I laughed. They were not waving at us, only rolling and playing now that we were out of the way. But it was so human a gesture that we automatically waved our arms overhead in reply. Then we turned back onto our faces again. Spears of sunlight cut through the thick green water and disappeared into the depths. A bottom soon revealed itself as tawny brown about 30 feet below us, and then the sand grew visible, along with occasional shells, and then the riot of shells near the shores. And finally, the pebbles of the shallows. Taking off our fins, we stepped from one liquid realm to another, from the whale road, as the Anglo-Saxons called the ocean, back onto the land of humans. Okay, so finally, I'm going to read a little something fanciful about owls. I love owls, and along with Jerry, I've had the privilege of helping John Confer tag saw-whet owls by common declaration, the world's cutest owl. And you can see how small they are. And I have a real crush on snowy owls. I just love snowies. In a book that has just gone to my editor, will come out next year, and that I'll be coming back to talk about, I have a whole chapter on snowy owls. What I'm going to read tonight, though, is about eastern screech owls. I find it's fun to study the senses of different animals and try to imagine what it might be like to perceive the world the way they do. I would be an owl if I could, a creature named after its sound. So I would be a howl if I could, sweet cheat of the night who slices open the air with soft, serrated wings, so silently it doesn't warn dozy prey. How far can it see? An owl could read the bottom line on an eye chart from a mile off, or hear a mouse stepping on a twig 75 feet away. Tuning and retuning, I would be an owl with ears twin radar dishes, eyes winged binoculars. A screech owl, because although baby screechers do screech, the adults make the most enchanting soft whinnying sound. I think you all have to join me in this, because I know that there are some really gifted screech owl imitators in the audience. So on three, okay? 1, 2, 3. That sounded so great, like just full of screech owls. As an owl, I'd swallow meals whole, head first, tumbling soft and furry down my throat to the firing plant that compacts all the inedibles into a hard pellet. And twice a day, growing bloated and queasy, I'd stretch my neck up and forward, squeeze my stomach hard, and vomit a hairy, bony nugget. Oh, I'd vomit gently, all things considered, not thrash and shake the pellet free for 5 minutes, like other inversely constipated owls. I'd eagerly coax these dainty pukes, not like the giant sea cucumber that hurls up its whole stomach and tosses it literally at the missing feet of fish. Then while the distracted fish feeds, steals away, a gutless wonder, but alive, soon to grow another stomach. No. I'd sing of owl puke, the pellets that pave my days with dense nuggets and offer home to fungi, beetles, and other tramps. Would it sound nicer if I called it a fur ball? Well, I suppose so. But a little cat fur swallowed while grooming really can't compare to a stony, wadded-up girdle of rodent, shrew, mole, gecko, and snake skeleton mixed with beetle crackle and songbird wings and oily fur, as if for a jigsaw puzzle of some chimera, part mammal, part bird, part reptile, part insect, but all tasty. Yes, all things considered, I would be an owl with a ukulele call, a cowl of gray feathers cupping my feathered jowls, talons sharp and strong as ice hooks, parachute wings, a demi-suit of down, and ingenue eyes, voodoo eyes. I would be possessed of the ultimate head swivel, upside down and around back and front again over the other shoulder, hunting among oaks and cottonwoods and old shady maples, with broad wings outstretched and head tucked in tight. I'd flap hard and fast, rarely gliding or hovering, while listening and watching for scuffling prey in the leaf litter and lawns. I'd sing duets with my mate during the day and be calmed by a male chorus at night, what's called a parliament of owls. What a panoply of songs and calls. There's the territorial flute and glass bell sounding tune, "This is my land," the chortling duet of food bringing, the descending whinnies of courtship, the "here comes the sun and night is falling" hoots, the reassuring "I'm bringing food home" hoot, the happy pottering around the nest hum, the scratchy alarm call, the faint but strident begging calls of the young, the explosive "get off my land" barks uttered in flight, the throaty trills while gabbing with a mate, the defensive hoots and harangues at nest invaders, and the billboard loud advertising song, "Look no further, I'm one hell of an owl." When frightened, I'd blend in with tree trunk or foliage. I love this. Stretching my frame long, closing my eyes to slits, tightening my feathers and standing still as old bark. In winter, I'd gobble hot meals of warm-blooded prey, and in summer, cool, crisp lizards, snakes, and bugs. And it goes without saying that I would marry for life. A long life of a score or two, lengthened by living in the suburbs and devouring the rat race. I would be an owl with wide feather skirts to curtsy with when courted by bowing suitors. Oh, the formal dances of courtship, ceremonial and piquantly oriental. First, a springtime male calls, robust as all get out, and I reply. We flirt like this several times. Then I see him flying in, watch him perch nearby, and begin head bobbing and bowing deeply, repeatedly, now and then winking one eye. Ignore him, and he would just chase harder. Accept, and the bill kissing and mutual preening begins, with the preened one uttering soft whimperings of delight, both fine-feathered friends, amused and enthused. Yes, all things considered, I would be an owl with owl-bright eyes, creature comforts, and wide wings with down fur below to wrap my chicks in owl love. Thank you. Well, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Fortunately, I know there are many friendly birders in the room who could answer them if I can't. So. Yes?
What happened after you broke your ribs?
Okay, well, what happened was the next day, the two men went back to see the albatrosses, and they left me in the bunker because I couldn't walk. And I started running a very, very high fever that I couldn't bring down with penicillin or any kind of aspirin or anything, any drugs that National Geographic gave me to take along. And I started to hallucinate. The fever was very high. And it's a backlit door, you know, to the bunker. There are no windows. And I saw what I thought was an angel or an albatross, backlit in the door. And the next thing I knew, this phantom came over and was sitting by me, and it was a woman. And I pointed inside, and I'm cracked, I'm broken. And I got out a piece of paper, and I wrote on it for at least one of the men to come back and help me, because I thought I was dying. And all I knew to say to her in Japanese was a hodori, albatross. And of course she knew where the albatrosses were. So she disappeared. I passed out. When I came to, there were two people there, and she had wrapped me in ice. She had gone down to the boat, brought ice up, put it in an old shirt of hers, and wrapped it around me. And they got me down to the boat, put me in one of those little bullet bunks that you can't really get out of, and went to the closest island with a hospital where the doctor said, yes, you have all of these broken ribs, but there's nothing we do about it. You know, he gave me heavy narcotics and that was it. And as I said, the kindness of strangers was amazing. They all helped me get home, which was really great. But from then on, I had been on a lot of trips. And some of them were a little dicier than others. You know, I was in my 30s, early 40s. I thought I can cope with all of this. After that trip, I started really thinking about whether I was going to take on any projects. One, for example, National Geo said they found the deepest cave in North America. And would I go down and write 1,000 feet of rope work? I said, oh no. But I know who you can call. And I recommended somebody who's just crazy enough to do it. So I really chose my trips after that very carefully. Yeah. And in the case of whales, I also went with Roger to Hawaii and got in the water when the whales were singing. And you could feel it on your bones. They vibrated. It was like vibrotactile sense. And you got a real sense of what it must feel like for them, not just sound, and also how sounds, our sounds, could affect them, you know, and rattle them and seem very chaotic to them as well.
How deep was the water in Patagonia where that picture was? It didn't look like it was too deep.
No, it was, I think we were at about 30 or 40 feet, something like that, well, as we were coming back in. But actually, out where the whales were, it was maybe 100 feet. It was deep enough for a whale. And it's just that it really gradually got shallower and shallower and shallower. And I think they were not going to come back with us into the shallows, although I understand that the whales do like to go to the shallows sometimes to roll and get scratched, get a back scratch. Now they don't have to go into the water to collect the whale skin anymore because they have a drone that will fly over and collect some of the mist when the whales come up, spurt air, you know, and that's all they need. And in one sense, of course, it's so convenient, but in the other, well, you lose that connection, that very personal connection that the people working with the whales, some cases students, have. And it probably changes their lives, you know, it changed mine. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I bet they still sneak into the water. Yes.
What is all those white markings on their skin?
Yeah, they're kind of like barnacles. They're like stony growths, and I've touched them. The nice thing about going out with a world's expert on something is that they have the right, almost always, to be very close to the animals, to touch them, to do various things. And so going out with Roger, we could do that and inspect them, and they came right up to the boat and wanted to be scratched.
Aww.
They were, you know, yes, it was like that. But, you know, they were used to whale camping there. So they were used to humans coming out and interacting with them. We didn't feed them or anything, but we were available. Once I was in the shallow Bahama banks with some people who study spotted dolphins, and the dolphins came in to play with the humans. And they really played. They would get you to follow them, and then they'd go faster, 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 and then they'd peel off and watch you. And once I lost the ribbon, I had my hair plaited, and the dolphin came up, got it, brought it back, dropped it. You know, I think they like, this is like their bathtub toy, you know? Yeah. Well, I see it's quarter of. Does this mean we need to stop?
We can probably go for another 5 minutes if everybody promises that we'll be out of the building by 9.
Okay, one more question back here.
Okay, so you got to see the baby whale nursing from the mother.
I did not see that.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering what whale nipples actually look like.
I have not seen whale nipples or whale dicks up close. I really have. I've seen photographs, but that's it. I once got, if you can imagine, if you go out on expeditions and stuff, you write about it, you do get some strange letters and stuff. And I once did hear from someone who wanted to know how you milk a whale. You know? Yes, because if the whale is nursing the young, certainly people could go milk the whale. I thought, what do you do? Put out a 3-legged stool? It was crazy. I didn't answer that. But on another occasion, I was giving a talk and somebody came up with a little vial that was full of sand. And it was sand from the beach there on Peninsula Valdez.
Okay, whose phone?
Is your phone doing a screech owl?
We found the screech owl.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone.
Well, anyway, thank you very much. I'm sorry I don't have books.